So picture this. It's early June 2025, and the vibe in Los Angeles is getting tense. The whole thing kicked off because of a series of aggressive immigration raids by federal agents. We're not talking about a quiet knock on the door. These were major operations happening all over the city. One minute you're shopping for a new outfit in the fashion district, the next minute, federal agents are sweeping through. They even hit up a Home Depot parking lot, which, let's be honest, is usually a place for weekend DIY dreams, not federal dragnets. It felt like the government was playing a citywide game of hide and seek, but with much higher stakes. These weren't just random actions, they were part of a larger, very public crackdown on immigration by the Trump administration. Over 100 people, who were just trying to live their lives, were arrested in these raids during the week. This kind of thing doesn't just happen in a vacuum. In a city like Los Angeles, which is built on the strength and diversity of its immigrant communities, these raids felt like a direct attack on the soul of the city. People were scared, they were angry, and they felt like their neighbors and family members were being targeted unfairly. This wasn't just a news story for them, it was personal. So, what do you do when you feel your community is under attack? You make some noise. The protests started on Friday, June 6th, as a direct response to what was happening. People from all walks of life, activists, families, students, you name it, started gathering to show their disapproval. They wanted to send a clear message to the federal government, not in our city. The initial demonstrations were passionate, but were intended to be a peaceful way for people to voice their outrage and stand in solidarity with those affected by the raids. The goal was to be seen and heard, to make it impossible for anyone to ignore what was happening. From downtown LA, the energy spread quickly. By Saturday, the protests had expanded to other cities in the area, like Paramount and Compton. It was a ripple effect of frustration. The more people heard about the raids, the more they felt compelled to join the demonstrations. The local police, the LAPD, found themselves in a tough spot. They claimed they weren't even given a heads up about the federal raids, which made it hard to manage the growing crowds and the escalating tensions. It was like trying to put out a fire that someone else keeps pouring gasoline on, creating a volatile situation that was just waiting for a match. As the weekend of June 7th and 8th rolled in, the atmosphere in Los Angeles shifted from tense to chaotic. The initial protests, which started with marches and chants, began to escalate dramatically. One of the most striking moments happened when thousands of demonstrators surged onto the 101 freeway, one of the city's main arteries. They effectively shut it down, bringing traffic to a standstill for miles. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a powerful statement, a way of saying that if the city's normal life was going to be disrupted by raids, then the protesters would disrupt it right back. It was a massive, unmissable symbol of their anger. The scene on the streets grew increasingly confrontational. Some of the protesters' actions became more destructive, showing just how high emotions were running. In a very 2025 move, they targeted self-driving Waymo cars, setting at least 4 of the futuristic vehicles on fire. I guess when you're mad at the powers that be, a robot car feels like a good stand-in. But it wasn't just that. People started throwing whatever they could find at the police lines. Heavy objects like chunks of concrete, rocks, electric scooters, and even fireworks. The protest had morphed into a full-blown clash with law enforcement. The police response was swift and forceful. Faced with a situation they described as overwhelming, officers in riot gear deployed a range of crowd control measures. They fired tear gas canisters into the crowds, sending people running with stinging eyes. They also used rubber bullets and flashbang grenades, which are designed to disorient and disperse large groups. The loud bangs and clouds of smoke turned parts of downtown LA into what looked like a conflict zone. The police officially declared the gathering an unlawful assembly, which legally allowed them to make arrests and use more aggressive tactics to clear the streets. By the end of the weekend, the message of the protests was almost drowned out by the noise of the conflict. Dozens of people were arrested, adding to the growing number of detentions. The very federal buildings the protesters were rallying against, like the downtown detention center, became the focal points of the most intense standoffs. The cycle was vicious. The raids led to protests, the protests led to clashes, and the clashes led to more arrests. The city was caught in a spiral of anger and reaction, and it was about to get another major player involved, one that would raise the stakes even higher. With images of burning cars and freeway blockades flashing across the news, President Donald Trump decided it was time to intervene directly. Never one to sit on the sidelines, he took to his favorite platform, Truth Social, to weigh in. He called the protesters violent people and promised they are not gonna get away with it. In a direct message to the LAPD chief, he urged the arrest of any protesters wearing face masks, and then, in all caps, he declared, "Bring in the troops." This was not a subtle suggestion. It was a clear command, setting the stage for a dramatic escalation. Following through on his promise, the Trump administration made a decisive move. They invoked a rare legal provision that allows the president to deploy the military on U.S. soil in cases of rebellion against the federal government. On Sunday, June 8th, the first wave of about 300 National Guard troops arrived in Los Angeles. Their stated mission was very specific: to protect federal property, particularly the detention center that had become a flashpoint for the protests. The authorization allowed for up to 2,000 troops to be deployed, signaling that the federal government was prepared for a much larger and longer-term presence if they deemed it necessary. The White House justified this extraordinary step by claiming that local and state authorities had failed to maintain order and protect federal interests. A spokesperson for the administration, Abigail Jackson, publicly stated that the LAPD had not been helpful to federal authorities and dismissed California's claims that the situation was under control as a bold-faced lie. From the federal perspective, the local police were overwhelmed and unwilling to do what was necessary, so they had to step in. The arrival of soldiers in military vehicles on the streets of an American city created a surreal and intimidating sight for residents and protesters alike. This wasn't just any military deployment. It was a federalization of a state's National Guard without the governor's consent. According to legal experts at the Brennan Center for Justice, this was an extremely rare event. In fact, it appeared to be the first time a state's guard had been activated against the governor's wishes since 1965, when President Lyndon B. Johnson federalized the Alabama National Guard to protect civil rights marchers. Using this power to suppress a protest against federal policy, however, set a new and controversial precedent, turning a local crisis into a national showdown over presidential power. The arrival of federalized troops on California soil without his permission sent Governor Gavin Newsom into immediate opposition. He saw the move not as a helpful intervention, but as a dangerous overreach of presidential power and a blatant political stunt. Newsom publicly condemned the deployment, calling it both illegal and immoral. He accused President Trump of deliberately instigating violence for his own political gain, essentially pouring fuel on the fire instead of helping to put it out. To him, this was a serious breach of state sovereignty, a federal takeover of a situation he insisted California could handle on its own. In response, Governor Newsom announced that the state would be taking the Trump administration to court. On Monday, June 9th, he planned to file a lawsuit to challenge the legality of the deployment. The central argument was that the president had no right to send in the National Guard without consulting or receiving a request from the governor. This set up a major legal and political battle over the fundamental principles of federalism, the balance of power between the state and the national government. It was a classic states' rights argument, but with the roles of who was arguing for what completely flipped from historical norms. The disagreement wasn't just happening at the highest levels. While the White House was criticizing the LAPD, the city's police chief, Jim McDonnell, was pushing back. He argued that his department had been blindsided by the federal immigration raids, which he said were conducted without any prior notification. This lack of coordination, he claimed, was what made the situation so difficult to manage in the first place. His department was stretched thin, trying to respond to a crisis they didn't create. It was a classic case of finger-pointing, with federal, state, and city officials all blaming each other for the chaos unfolding on the streets. Meanwhile, the unrest wasn't limited to Los Angeles. On that same tense Sunday night, protests also flared up in San Francisco. There too, police declared an unlawful assembly after some protesters became violent, vandalizing property and damaging a police vehicle, leading to dozens of arrests. The situation highlighted that the anger was widespread across California. The showdown between Trump and Newsom over the National Guard became a symbol of a deeply divided country, where a protest in one city could instantly ignite a constitutional crisis and expose the raw, frayed nerves of the entire nation.
Hey, we all want to scale our business. Hey, I have the answer for you today to help you do that. If you're looking to scale from 5, 6, even 7 figures and beyond, book called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. I'm going to give it to you for free. All you have to do is type in growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and you can download the book for absolutely free. I hope the book helps you this year. Take your business to the next level. Again, go grab the book, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. I wish you the best and grow, scale, and win.
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Dear God, it's beautiful.